I'm one of the co-founders of Capp. We set the business up 14 years ago and our mission is to strengthen the world. So I hope this presentation will hopefully inspire you if you're not currently using your own strengths at work or if you're not using it in recruitment, at least for you to have something to think about. Because we have got 14 years worth of work, I'm going to talk a little bit about now and also in the future. Any of you in the room heard of strengths-based recruitment? Maybe a show of hands. Brilliant. Any of you using strengths-based recruitment? Fabulous. Okay, so just one hand of a user. So let's see if we can get some converts. So I'm going to talk to you about really the place that strengths has in your recruitment process, but how it goes really hand in hand with technology and the candidate experience. So I'm going to build a little bit on some of the things that Neil was talking about from Reed, and also I think some of the work that Enthuse are going to talk about later as well. So we didn't plan it that way, but it's going to be very harmonious. So technology is really a major part of our lives, more now than ever before. But does the recruitment process really demonstrate anything that different to what it did 10 years ago? We would argue at Capp that the recruitment process hasn't really become as consumer-driven as many of the other sites that you use on a regular basis. My favourite example is when I think about spending an overnight trip to London and I go onto TripAdvisor and I go around Google Maps and I have a really good look at where I'm going to stay, but that information when I look at for a job just doesn't really exist. So we're creating processes which are slightly out of sync with the consumer technology that we use in the rest of our lives. This is not an annual stat, this is a lifetime stat for any of you that are going to fall off for your chairs. And actually, research this morning suggests this is lower. We spend an awful lot of time at work. So the choice that your candidates take to join your company is arguably one of the biggest choices they're going to take in relation to their well-being and their general satisfaction. And we share so little with them about the job that they're going to be embarking upon. And in some cases, we make it an incredibly glossy job that might not be the true reality. Arguably, nearly all organisations are looking for good people, and good people want to find a great organisation to work for. One of the things that we can do with strengths is genuinely get a match between people who are going to not just love to do the job, but they can do the job. It's this blend of can do and love to that strengths gives us. The recruitment process, unfortunately, has not really changed much over the years. I don't know if any of you are using any of these things, but I'm an occupational psychologist by background, and I have certainly implemented many of these processes over the years. They have not made a drastic difference. So competencies have been a big part of our world for many years. Some people have started to use online testing. From online testing, we started to get into behavioural interviewing and behavioural testing, and situational judgment tests have made a bit of a difference. But what candidates often say about those processes is they're still very dry and very, very uninformed about the actual job that they're going to do. So what we're trying to do at Capp is really blend a level of technology and automation. Neil talked about the need for people wanting to get a response within that incredibly short time frame. And what we're looking at Capp is technology that will get you a matched candidate, but will also do it in a really fast time. About 5 years ago as an organisation, we had a chance to consider, did we go down the gaming route or the immersive route? And what we decided was that if we were going to get candidates who truly had jobs that they were going to love, we were going to go heavily down the immersive route. And I'll show you some things that we've done to give education and information to candidates as they go through your assessment processes. Right now, giving a candidate a realistic insight from the moment you put your job advert up all the way through to the assessment centre, we think is one of the best gifts you can give your candidate through the process. So what we're trying to blend is authentic insight and a strengths-based process so you can get the best fit candidate for the job. Essentially, what I want to give you a little glimmer to is what we try and evoke in a strengths-based recruitment process, which is these three things. I mentioned you probably all have got competency frameworks. A competency framework is amazing at establishing whether somebody is good for the job. Great, you need that, we all need that. What it won't show you is whether a candidate really loves that job. So what we're trying to evoke, even in that tiny little experiment, is somebody that has something that they're good at, but actually has something that they're motivated and energized by. And when you're really flying high, you're going to be using that strength a lot of the time. So we are looking for people, even when they're completing an online assessment, to be responding to content and showing whether they're good at responding to that content, but how motivated they are. If we get them to video interview, and I love a video interview, I know it's got controversy around it, but someone who's speaking from a strengths perspective on video interview, their nose will be at the video camera. You see some of that animation, you can see it very visually. You can hear it down the phone if you're still doing telephone interviews, but video is great. At Assessment Centre, we're asking questions, not just competency-based questions, we still ask some of those, but we are asking about feeling, motivation. And we're doing this very much in emerging talent, but also in volume roles, executive roles. I think some of my most interesting work has actually been at the leadership level, where you have got an astounding CV, but when you put them through a strengths-based interview, they've not actually got the motivation to replicate that performance again in another company, or maybe not within your culture. So 3 things, if you take 3 things away: a strength, something that you're good at, that you find energizing, and that you want to do a lot. I mentioned I'm an occupational psychologist, so I love a bit of measurement. How does this look then if I'm going to measure you as a candidate? Quite simply, it's that we're looking for really high capability and really high engagement. So when we score people at interview stage, and we're really happy to share sample interviews and assessments, we're looking for people that first of all are high on the capability, so they get your performance. You don't just want loads of people who are energized but can't do the job, it'll be a nightmare. But then really high on the engagement. Where we're really happy to take a punt on somebody is where they're in this potential strength box, that they're demonstrating some capability, but their energy is incredibly high, their engagement's high. If you're recruiting for jobs where you don't have to have a past history in order to see whether you fit for that job, then this high engagement, slightly lower capability for us is where there's great potential. So in things like call centre jobs, we've taken people who have got no background in customer service whatsoever, but they've shown so much passion for that role and a bit of capability that they've gone on to be incredibly successful. So just one to highlight from a diversity perspective. The other thing that's critical when we're looking at technology is measuring exactly what matters. I've mentioned to you a few times that you've probably got frameworks. When we develop a strengths-based framework, we are absolutely trying to find a really precise language in that framework to describe your culture and your organisation. So we're a little bolder with those choice of words, so that when we build anything off of it, if you were going to build an interview off of it, it would be exactly what was going to meet the needs of your organisation. In building this type of framework, we want to spend about 40% of the time working out what you need in the future. So if you were going to start building frameworks for jobs, you would be really examining who are the stakeholders in the business who can talk about the future of this company. What companies do we want to benchmark ourselves against? What are the best currently doing? And are there any things, I've talked about cultural artefacts, but are there any things that are sacred in this organisation? Someone like Johnson & Johnson's has their credo. You absolutely need to make sense of the credo before you can get a recruit into the business. but taking these factors into account and then building a framework with the future and the past in mind. So this is an example of one of our clients' frameworks with a strengths lens over it. And I just pull out things like not just a team worker, it's a virtual collaborator, because in the future, most of this role is going to be done online. It's actually not just that I've got a drive for results, I'm a proactive achiever. I've got an energy about what I want to do. And it's this type of language that's delivering results from a strengths perspective, still measuring the engagement as we go. One thing that we've found over the years is that if we're going to build out holistic profiles for our clients, we also need to take account of cognitive capability, technical capability. And so our blend now, when we're looking for a great match, is often about the strengths and this cognitive element as well. But ideally, if we're going to have people who are great at critical analyst, they're also going to love analysing data. So we still get that motivation lens as we go through. So what we want is really immersive experiences that are giving the candidate this authentic view of your organisation. Here's an example of some of the components that we build out for organisations. Often a much shorter application form so that we can get people straight into experiencing the online assessment. And then in the online assessment, we'll do everything at once. So we'll do behaviour questions and cognitive questions in one go. Candidates tell us they don't mind spending longer on assessment if it's not hurdled. They'd love to do just one online assessment. And then often on a video platform, we'll do a job simulation, take the story to the candidate, see if they've got the skills and the passion for the actual job you're recruiting for. And then use the assessment centre as a chance for your final sell, your final finale of the story that you've presented to the candidate. And here, in the future, we're really using VR more. So the future of strengths for us is bringing virtual reality into the process as well. Here's an example of an assessment that we're currently delivering to Accenture to give you an example of this type of immersive experience. This portal is delivering a story about augmented reality to every emerging talent recruit at Accenture. It's giving examples at the top line of what augmented reality means to Accenture. In the middle line, it shows the types of work that if I was a consultant, I would be engaging with. And if you were to click on this tile, it would give you an example of a really difficult conference call with internal stakeholders that the candidate has to navigate through. So we're presenting quite an immersive experience of what it's like to work with Accenture, the types of technologies that they're going to use, the types of organisations that they work with, but also the sorts of people that they would have to deal with. This portal is assessing scenarios and behaviour, but also numerical capability. And for Accenture, and this speaks to Neil's 24 hours, candidates take just this, and then they get taken straight through to assessment centre if they're successful. So it's just a one-stop online assessment before they go through to their final assessment centre. What we're trying to do is make sure that this process is amazingly positive for the candidate, whether they're successful or not. Every single candidate gets very thorough feedback for every stage that they go through. So if they go through that portal and they're unsuccessful, they will still get strengths-based feedback about how they can develop their career. We have candidates coming to us saying this is the best feedback they've ever received, better than anything they've got from career centres previously. One of the things that I find really supportive about these approaches is how accessible they are to dyslexic candidates. These assessments aren't timed, so candidates are able to spend along being assessed as they need to be in order to demonstrate their strengths for the role. And here's just some of the results we're getting from a candidate experience perspective. For those really hard business results, what we're finding is that when you give an immersive experience to the candidate, you're actually getting greater results in relation to reduced attrition, higher customer satisfaction, and even data around sickness and absenteeism. For us, this has been just the start of bringing strengths into the recruitment process. What we've started to do at the final stage is find that we can take virtual reality into the assessment centre. And this is an example of where people are being assessed for strengths at the final stage with a VR headset on and then being able to see if they've got the strengths for the job. When we first set up VR, we found that there's actually physiological changes in people when they're being assessed for strengths. So when you're actually being assessed for, could be resilience or service, I actually get a physiological change. So these are some of the results pre-VR, and these are some of the heart rate results post-VR. Some people's heart rate, we did speak to them, it was a little bit higher than expected. And in the case of myself, it didn't change at all. So I've obviously got some troubles of my own. Here's some examples of the VR environments that we're using. They can be fully customized, so you could be pressing on that iPad and it could be your own content. And here's one that we're using both in assessment and training, so a kind of full lecture theatre scenario. What we're finding also from a VR perspective is from a diversity point of view, the environment is standardised. So unlike a group exercise where you might get a wild candidate, the assessors will often give you the same rating across all competencies. In VR, what we find is the environment is stabilised. So we can see a candidate demonstrating different behaviour each time, but the environment stayed identical for every single candidate. Where's it heading in the future? Well, it will be that actually we will start tracking candidates' changes in physiological heart rates and things as well when they're in VR. It's a little far-fetched, but it is happening in places, just to see if they had a motivational change as well as a reaction to the environment that they're in. So, some final takeaways from me from this session. Measure what matters. It's really key that you're measuring exactly what you need if you're going to embed technology. Where you can, and it could be the smallest thing, think about where you can share a true reality with your candidates. Look for candidates that have got that high capability and engagement. It will provide good results for your business. And harness the technology that's out there to deliver these faster and more efficient processes, even though they can be highly immersive and strengths-based. Thank you.